So welcome everybody. It's great to have all of you wherever you are joining from to discuss Infinitum Copper. Steve and Peter, welcome. I think most of you are familiar with both Peter and Steve Robertson. To start the webinar is just to have a little bit of an informal chat, maybe with me playing a little bit the role of the interviewer, so to speak, and just talk a little bit about a few topics that I think are top of everybody's mind, and then give Steve an opportunity to do a formal presentation together with Peter about Infinitum Copper. We're bringing this webinar to everybody at a time where we're just at a very interesting moment in the markets. Everything is all the assets are underperforming, and it really I spent a lot of last week looking at all the different opportunities that are out there and valuations coming down at the time where also, commodities have an incredible outlook. It's certainly an interesting time for investors. We certainly, worry about the market in general, but at the same time, you recognize that, and today we're here to talk about copper, but I think just copper and commodities in general have a tremendous outlook. And then the second topic that it's quite interesting in the context of Infinitum Copper is Peter Megaw's philosophy of exploration and the kind of projects that you look for, and what we have here with Infinitum Copper. So what I thought we could do is maybe I just say a little bit of a few words of how Infinitum Copper came to be. As many of you know, we started Reyna Silver close to 4 years ago as a private company, and I've always liked telling people this story. I came to Peter to visit him and his house in Tucson. I think it was 2018, really asking him for advice on if you were going to invest in the silver market, which at the time nobody wanted to touch. Nobody wanted to invest in silver, the commodity, let alone the equities. However, it was very clear to me at the time that silver had a very promising future. So I went to Peter's house in Tucson and asked Peter for some advice. And he said to me, look, in the silver space, you have two options. One, you go for a deposit that's been tried through different cycles and has a resource, but needs a very high silver price. And there's some of those available, but it's not something that I would recommend to you. My philosophy of exploration is go and look for a district scale project, something that has the potential for being a bigger asset. Obviously, a lot of focus on high grade. So that's how we started Reyna Silver. And in parallel, we had a great interest in copper. We thought copper is even back then, but I think even more so now, a commodity that has just a tremendous importance in the transition that we're going through in the electrification of the world. And Peter had been involved and generated through his private company in Mexico, a project called Adelita, which is the basis of Infinitum Copper. We have another project called Hot Breccia in Arizona, but really the main focus so far has been on the Adelita Project. And we've had couple of very exciting press releases over the last couple of weeks, but really the beauty of a project like Adelita is we have a district scale. Right now we're only focusing on drilling the skarn, but we are exploring the entire land package and already having indications that there's a lot of significant mineralization throughout the property. And these kind of high grade copper results that we generating are quite encouraging. To have the opportunity to have a property like this, also very significant in the kind of market that we are going into. And maybe just with that brief introduction from my end, having been one of the co-founders of Infinitum Copper, I wanted to ask Peter if he wouldn't mind maybe giving us a little bit of an introduction, and primarily for people who might not be familiar with your philosophy of exploration. If you don't mind maybe giving a brief introduction, Peter, on what are your thoughts on exploration, and maybe a little bit of your background with Adelita and how that project came to be.
Be happy to talk about that briefly. It's fairly straightforward. I'm not sure I would necessarily call it an exploration philosophy as much as a common sense approach to what you should look for, which is something that will make money which means you're looking for something that the grade is high enough that it's profitable under bad market conditions and big enough to survive at least 2 market cycles. So you're sleeping at night at the worst of times and you're making lots of money every other time. And especially with a commodity like copper, which historically has some pretty interesting cycles to superimpose on just the economic cycles that we live through anyway. But moving into, as you mentioned, this sort of worldwide shift towards electrification, increased demand for copper. Copper is historically in the hands of a few major companies who go after gigantic low-grade deposits, which cost billions of dollars to put into production. But there are higher grade properties that you can put into production for much less money and make a lot of money off of if the grade is good. And that's the beauty of Adelita, is that we're seeing 1.5% to 2% copper grades with a healthy gold kicker. And it's clear as we explore Adelita that there's a lot more there than anybody knew. I mean, somebody might say it's an underexplored property. Large parts of it are effectively unexplored. And I have to give credit to Rafael Gallardo for generating the project in the first place, because he brought it into our group and said, hey, look, I've got this property. I've recognized this property. We really should pick this up. And so we did, and kept expanding the property package because we kept finding more and more. And now that Infinitum has gotten involved under Steve's direction, there's all this, actual work being done, digging trenches. I mean, when was the last time you went out onto a property and you dug a trench in a new area and you got 9 grams or 16 grams of gold and almost 2% copper over 9 meters? I mean, that's truly remarkable to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And what we're recognizing is large scale zoning, multiple different styles of mineralization, probably all related to each other. It's just an exciting property to be working on because, as you say, it's a district scale. And when we're talking about district, we're talking about essentially all of the manifestations of mineralization from a particular ore forming event. So you get everything. It's not like you're having to share half of the deposit or a quarter of the deposit. You've got pretty much everything formed by this system. That's a great way to do exploration. High grade, big, and with lots of upside. It takes a while. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to put 1 or 2 drill holes into and be an overnight success. But nothing big that matters is.
No, exactly. And Peter, you touched on a couple of things that, I think it'd be worth, if you have a minute, to maybe talk a little bit about Rafa Gallardo. And, for those of you who don't know, that Rafa is the geologist who generated this property, somebody who's been working with Peter for many, many years. And he's actually the person on the ground leading the exploration efforts. And then the other thing I wanted to sort of connect it to that, Peter, was, if you don't mind just very briefly talking about the context of where the project is, because it's very close to, I guess it's the same district as the project that Minorum is exploring, or at least, close to it. And it's just such an interesting area of Mexico, just geologically. And I think it'd be quite interesting since we have the opportunity to talk to you, if you don't mind saying a few words about the geological context of where Adelita sits. Sure.
I mean, Rafael I've worked with Rafael for more than 30 years, since more or less he was straight out of school. We've done a lot of projects together. He's got a really good eye for recognizing district scale targets that have been overlooked or underexplored. He married a girl from Alamo, Sonora. This is a famous old colonial mining town in southern Sonora. So he spent a lot of time in that area. He has gotten to know a lot of the people in that area. So he's well known in the area, and he's esteemed because he's got great integrity and he's honest with people and make sure that everybody benefits from the work that gets done. He the Alamos district, as I said, was a historic silver producer. That's what Minorum is working on, is the silver part of the district. But there's also the Alamo Dorado copper gold mine, which was run by Pan American, essentially right next door to Adelita. And there's the Cobre de Mayo open pit copper mine,
right,
about another 20 kilometers to the west. So it's clearly copper country. It's clearly mining country. It's a community that's comfortable with mining. It's the underpinning of their economy. And Rafa knows it as well or better than anybody else out there. So it's a real pleasure when he brings in a project to take a look and see what his eye has picked up, and Adelita works.
Absolutely. Maybe to also, transition a little bit on into introducing Steve. Maybe Steve, why don't you just take a minute to maybe if it's okay with you to introduce a little bit yourself, what you've done in the past, and also maybe your connection to Peter and how this whole thing came together.
Thanks, Jorge. I worked for 24 years for a company called Imperial Metals in Vancouver, a mine developer and operator. It's there that I met Peter. In 1997, I was given the opportunity to manage a project in northern British Columbia called Silvertip. And Silvertip was the first carbonate replacement deposit that I'd worked on. So I quickly set about trying to find out, well, who's the leading authority in the world and on CRDs, and Peter's name popped up right away. So we started to work together at that time, and had also worked together on another very productive CRD in northern British Columbia called Stardust, where we made a discovery. The discovery hole there was 100 meters of 5% copper. So it's been a lot of fun working on carbonate replacement deposits, and very satisfying working with Peter as well, who seems to have this tremendous ability to see things from both the micro scale, but also from the 40,000 foot view, and putting everything in context. And that's really important when you're exploring a district like we are at La Adelita. We really do seem to have a district scale system there, and it's important to be able to put everything in context. So we set about forming a premier copper explorer with Infinitum Copper. And Jorge, you were talking a little earlier about the copper market, and I'll just mention a statement that I saw this morning from Goldman, where they say, well, we can't really go long on copper because of what's happening in the macro environment, but we can't go short on copper because of what's happening with the fundamentals. I mean, the fundamentals for the copper market are so strong right now. The macro stuff will get sorted out, I believe, and it's still going to be what's going to drive everything is this electrification of society, the need to get off carbon-based fuels and switch over to electric, get people into electric vehicles and the grid to support that, plus all the automation that's going on in the world. So all of this is done on the back of copper. There's no substitute for it. And I'll just say one thing in regard to developing a premier copper explorer. We wanted to do exactly what you were talking about with Reina Silver. We're not going to be recycling old projects that didn't make it in the last price cycle. We've set ourselves up to create wealth through discovery. And I think we've got the right team and the right portfolio to do that.
Yeah, and there was one connected to this approach. I wanted to actually ask this question to get both Peter and Steve's perspective on this. But we were all together at the Beaver Creek and Denver Gold shows, I guess last month, and a couple of themes that I thought were really interesting was, I spoke to a number of the analysts during the meetings, and they were talking about how in the kind of market that we're going into, where there is companies have less access to capital, the value of geoscience based exploration, using a lot of tools that a lot of companies in sort of what you would call a hot market, in an effort to get real results quickly, skip certain steps. Also started to see more and more companies speak about this concept of ore system sort of as I don't know if it's a substitute or as a complement to district scale, and this whole concept that you look for systems that are large and that perhaps have more than one type of style of mineralization and how to tie it together. So if it's okay with both Peter and Steve to share your thoughts on these two concepts, the value of the kind of work that you're able to do in a market like we're now, with certain methods that are, like for instance in Infinitum Copper, I think it seems to me that we've zeroed in a method that we can replicate in both in the previous drill holes that have been done, and the ones that we have done now, get consistent results. If both of you would be willing to share your thoughts on this, I think it gives a very nice context before we start the presentation.
Go ahead.
So maybe I'll ask.
I was going to say
first.
the same, Steve. Steve first.
Well, okay, I'll start off. It's my turn to pat Rafa Gerardo on the back now. He's a tremendous geologist, and he's also built a tremendous team. And I think when you take a look at the success that we've had so far in this company, we take a look back at the drill results, but it's not the drill results that got us to where we're at now. It's boot leather on bedrock. We've heard this phrase many times before. There's nothing that finds deposits like boot leather on bedrock. And, Rafa has built a great team that have gone out into the field, and they've made 3 significant new discoveries so far this season. And really, when we're taking a look at this district scale target, all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are starting to fall into place to show the metal zonation and so on. And that's from, having guys that have a good nose for mineralization out in the bush, knowing what to look for. These guys have got a history of success. They know what success looks like, feels like, and tastes like. And they can actually zero in on the important factors that we need to be able to identify so that we can put the drills in the right place. And then that results in some of the good drill results that we've gotten. So it all starts with having that great field team.
Yeah, no question about that. And your comment about ore systems, I mean, that's another way of saying district scale. It's another way of saying that you're looking for all of the different manifestations of mineralization from an individual ore forming event. And, an ore forming event is a combination of a process, which is an ore fluid is produced somehow in the Earth's crust, and then how that interacts with the environment where that fluid gets pumped. And sometimes it's reaction with rocks, sometimes it's infilling of fractures. Different styles of mineralization occur in different rocks, but they're all fundamentally formed by the same ultimate ore forming process. And one of the beauties of Adelita is it sits in one of the best copper endowed regions on the planet. If you look at Arizona and Sonora, the porphyry cluster that is characteristic of that region. It's got some of the world's biggest and best porphyry copper and high grade copper replacement deposits. And Adelita, as I mentioned earlier, is not far from an existing open pit mine, which operates on a porphyry copper. But there's also high-grade stuff like what we're finding at Adelita, and there's every reason to think that there is a porphyry somewhere driving the Adelita system. And we know there's at least one. The Mesquital intrusion looks like it's got characteristics of a porphyry, but some of the zoning to me looks like it's, well, let's just say it doesn't look like Mesquital may be the source. It may be related to the source, but I don't think we've actually seen the source intrusion that's driving this thing yet.
Great. So I think the maybe with this context, why don't we, Steve, give you an opportunity to walk us through the presentation. For everybody who's listening, we'll go through the presentation, and then we have time for questions and answers and more discussion. Send the question either through the chat, or if you have my email or my WhatsApp, that's also a good way to send me the questions. So, Steve, I'll pass the word to you.
Well, thank you very much. Looking forward to giving the presentation on building the next copper discoverer. We'd already put in context what we're trying to do with Infinitum Copper, and this is clearly copper discoverer is at the heart of what we want to build here. I am going to have forward-looking statements in the presentation. These are the 4 pillars that we developed this company on. We wanted to have a portfolio of high-quality assets. So far, we have Adelita and Hot Breccia. We'll go through those both in detail, and we're going to continue to look for other opportunities to build into the portfolio as we go forward. We want to work in safe, mining-friendly jurisdictions, and this is a point that is actually becoming more and more germane as we move forward. There's more and more places in the world where I really don't want to work these days. We want to be in places where you not only have good security of tenure, but also when you find something of substance that you've got a decent chance of being able to build a mine and put it into production. The discovery process is kind of useless if you don't have that last component. So that's what we mean by safe mining friendly jurisdictions. And we think that Sonora State and Arizona State are good examples of the type of jurisdiction we want to be in. Of course, the world-class team is a key to our philosophy of being a copper discoverer. So we'll go through the team in more detail, but I should just say right at this point that I'm a strong believer that if you surround yourself with serially successful people, you have a much greater chance of being successful. And I think that's what we're doing here. And now we have this great opportunity with La Adelita. This is, in my view, a rare opportunity to walk onto a project with so much low-hanging fruit, and it really is proving to work out quite well. We just went public on March the 16th of this year, so we're a very fresh company, fresh out of the gates. You can see that our total share count right now is about 45 million shares. Because of escrow and restrictions, there's actually only 23 million shares that are available for trading as of today. Insiders own north of 20% of the shares, including Jorge, myself, and Peter. And today, with at 19 cents, I think our last trade was actually at 16 cents. So we've got a market cap of less than 8 million Canadian at this point. So very low valuation, but this is a headwind to the market. And I think that with continued success in the company, we're going to be able to change that. Just a couple of slides on copper and why we think we're in the right sector. This is a chart showing not only the past copper supply and demand, but also projections into the future. And you can see that there's a real divergence between the supply shown as the red line and demand showing as this multicolored chart going up. There's a divergence in about 2024. Very soon, we're going to grow dramatically short of the amount of copper that's going to be required to supply society's needs. And that is related to the discovery rate of copper deposits globally. This is the discovery rate over the last 30 years. And you can see in the first 20 of those 30 years, we had an average discovery of 10.4 major discoveries made globally every year. And then in the last decade, that discovery rate drops down to 1.6. So we've had a drop of almost an order of magnitude in the number of discoveries being made, despite the fact that the black line is exploration budgets. We're trying harder and harder to find them. And there's a number of reasons for that, but mostly because we're starting to really look globally at these deposits, and the big fat porphyries sitting right on the surface have all been found. And so the next generation of copper discoveries are going to be different. They're potentially going to be buried a little bit deeper, or potentially they're going to be like at La Adelita, smaller, higher grade deposits. That's potentially, I think, what's going to really fuel the next phase of copper production going forward, or deposits like that. And this is just a chart showing that the head grades of all the major mines, copper mines in the world, are dropping. That's a natural phenomenon that you see. Your miners always start with their best grades, and the head grades go down over time. And this just exacerbates that problem of copper production going forward. Now, moving on to the team, I don't think that we'll spend any more time introducing Peter. He's well known to everybody here, certainly on this call, I'm sure. But Peter's counterpart in the porphyry world would be Doug Kerwin, who was the executive vice president of Ivanhoe for many, many years, led the team there to a number of discoveries. So both Peter and Doug have many exploration credits to their name. And when I was talking earlier about surrounding yourself with serially successful people, these are the two gentlemen I was talking about. And then on the capital markets side, we've got Jorge, who has a great series of connections to the capital markets, particularly in Asia and Australia. and also in North America. So gives us great reach into that. Here's Rafa. We've gushed about Rafa a little bit in terms of his geological abilities. Rafa is also just a tremendous ambassador for our company in the local community. When you walk down the street with Rafa in the local community where the camp is set up, it's like walking down the street with the mayor. Everybody knows him, everybody likes him, and really has done a great job of establishing excellent community relations for us. And then our board of directors also highly experienced with a very diverse set of skills. Mahendra is our chairman and was actually the founding CFO with IM Gold, worked there for over 20 years until his recent retirement, and really understands the ins and outs of the financial side of the mining sector. Marco and Michael are partners of Jorge's at IMC Capital, both great businessmen. Garrick is a mining engineer from Australia with a lot of experience and adds a completely different set of skills to our board. And Ivan is a successful businessman based in Hong Kong. So really just a great board to work with. So we'll go on and talk about the two projects now. Hot Breccia up in Arizona and La Adelita, our flagship asset down in Sonora State in Mexico. We'll start by talking about La Adelita. So here we are at the south end of Sonora State. There's the local town of Alamos that has been referred to previously. Here's the Piedras Verdes mine, or Cobre de Mayo, large open pit copper deposit. We're also right next door to the Alamo Dorado mine, which was operated by Pan American Silver. And that's really important to us because we think it's part of the same mineral district. You've heard reference to mineral districts in the presentation earlier. We think that we control most of the mineral district on our property, but we don't control the one part that's already been mined out. We've got an option to earn 80% of La Adelita from Menorm Gold, and we'll probably satisfy the earning conditions very soon. We've got a bit more money to spend, but once we've satisfied those earning conditions, then we'll form a joint venture with Menorm 80-20 going forward. And this is a closer yet look at La Adelita. You can see the number of exploration zones that we've identified, shown as the yellow ovoids. The buried porphyry system, we believe, is at Mezquital, potentially the intrusive engine that drives all of the mineralization. But as Peter said, we're not making too many presumptions about that. There's a good potential that the actual causative intrusive has not been identified yet. We've got 3 brand new discoveries on the property this year, the 3 red stars that you see here. Cerro Grande is the main zone that has been identified over many years, and it's a high-grade copper, silver, gold skarn. We looked 45 meters stratigraphically lower and actually found a new horizon called Cerro Grande footwall that looks like it's equally strong in mineralization and potentially doubles the tonnage potential in this area of Cerro Grande. When our field crews were doing some of that boot leather on bedrock work, they actually discovered that the limestone that hosts this mineralization is folded in an anticline. And when we went over to look at the west limb of the anticline, we discovered more high-grade copper, silver, gold mineralization 800 meters to the west. So we've found the same horizon where it's folded back into the hillside over here. And that's really quite a significant discovery for us because it opens up that stratigraphy all the way down to the south where the fold closes and then back up to the north again. So it's about, we've got about another 300 meters to the north of prospective stratigraphy, 1.2 kilometers to the south, and then all the way back up the west limb. There's a substantial amount of area to cover in terms of looking for more of this mineralization. When we realized that we had more discoveries in this area, we actually embarked on a geophysical survey and put in 7 lines of magnetotellurics in this area to see if we could identify additional conductive anomalies, and we'll show you some of those results in a few slides. And then 5 kilometers to the south, we made a new discovery down here at Las Trancas. There had been a well-established alteration zone that was known here. There was geochemistry down there that had been teasing explorers for quite some time, but we're the first ones really to put a pin in it and be able to identify the mineralization in bedrock. And that's where we came up with Trench 2, which had 9 meters of 16.5 grams gold and 2% copper, round numbers. So this is a very exciting new discovery for us. So this is the graphic just explaining the geological thesis that we're working on in terms of you got a multi-phased intrusive that comes into the area that will set up a radial fracture pattern when you have the crust disturbed that way. And the radial fracture pattern can act as a plumbing system where those fluids flow out into the surrounding areas. And when they hit limestone, there's a chemical reaction that causes the solubility of the metals to drop. And as a result, you drop out all the metals and get this high-grade mineralization like we see at Cerro Grande Footwall, and Pericos, as well as Las Trancas. Just before I leave this slide, I'll point out one more thing. That's the scale of everything. If the heart of the system is here, it's 3 kilometers over to Cerro Grande. It's 5 kilometers down to Las Trancas. It's 7 kilometers over to Alamo Dorado. Talking about the important things that we look for in these systems, size and grade. This is certainly looking like a big system, at least 10 kilometers east-west, and still abilities to expand that, and then at least 5 kilometers north-south. And I'm sure that we're not finished doing exploration further to the south here as well. So we've got size and grade showing up. We just need to fill in a few more pieces in that jigsaw puzzle to find out exactly what it looks like. And here's Peter's exploration model. Perhaps I'll leave any further discussion on this if Peter wants to go back to address it later. But just suffice to say that we've got an intrusive source bringing the fluids into the area. Where we're finding right now would be in the skarn zone, which is just outboard from that. So high-grade copper, precious metal, enriched skarn is where we're having our exploration success, it appears. And here's a few of the slides showing the results of the geophysics that we conducted earlier this year. This is showing where we know the Cerro Grande limb is. And if you can imagine an anticline with another limb coming down over here, this would be where Pericos is at. And what's really exciting to us is we've got this area in the middle where you would have the axial plane of the fold that has showed this great conductor. And this is completely untested. You can see we've got a proposed drill hole coming in here from the west. There's no road access onto the west side of the mountain right now where Pericos was discovered. So that's one of our exploration plans, is to get a trail built into that area so we can get a diamond drill up there and drill some of these proposed holes into this conductor. And the conductor is a really exciting development for us because we find it not only on this section, but on the 4 sections to the south as well. And it's completely open to the north. So this looks like it's something very real, and we'd love to get a drill hole into this to test and see exactly what it is. Now, we've drilled 12 holes on the project so far this year, 2,600 meters, and we've released 4 of those drill holes. These are the first 2 from this season, holes 17 and 18. You can see hole 17 actually fell a little bit short of drilling this target. We actually twisted off the rods. It was our first drill hole of the season, and we remedied the problem that caused that to happen. And on our second hole, we were quite successful in penetrating that horizon. We ended up with a 20-meter true thickness of almost 2% copper, 2 grams gold, and 40 grams silver. So very high-grade mineralization over very substantial width. This is exactly the type of result that we love to see at La Adelita, and it's going to get us to the goal that we're looking for. And then 110 meters to the south, we had our second set of drill holes, holes 19 and 20. And you can see this result here in hole 19, 32.25 meters of true thickness at grading 1.75% copper equivalent. So very substantial thickness of high-grade mineralization in this area as well. And this is the section that's 3 to the south of the one that we looked at previously. And you can see this big conductor sitting down in the axial fold area is still present and just begging to be drilled. So again, if we can get the road access in on the west side of the mountain, these are the proposed holes that we would like to drill into that target. Now, going 5 kilometers to the south to Las Trancas, we've got additional excitement down here. You can see there's our trench where we got the 9 meters of 16.5 grams gold and 2% copper in bedrock. We've been able to actually identify the structure that hosts that mineralization, and we project that it's dipping steeply about 80 degrees to the west. And we want to set up 2 proposed holes here to drill underneath of it. Now, there's been geochemistry anomalies identified in the area in the past, and you can see here's an old drill hole from 2005 where somebody was drilling after a geochemistry anomaly, but they were unfortunately about 200 meters too far to the west. So now that we have actually identified the mineralization in bedrock, we're hoping that we'll be able to extend that to depth with these 2 drill holes. So that'll be a high priority for us when we get back to work at Adelita after the rainy season. Just put in this slide to show how little work has been done on the property so far. Less than 7,300 meters of drilling in total on the property. So lots of work still to do. You might say the surface has barely been scratched when you take a look at the size of the overall system. So this is where we're at. We've completed our phase 1. It was about 2,600 meters and 12 holes. We've taken a break for the rainy season, which should be coming to a conclusion here very soon. And we would like to embark on more diamond drilling. But we're also we've had so much success with keeping the field crews busy in the field. We want to make sure that that's going to be our focus, is keeping boot leather on bedrock again. I'll say it again. And that's what's resulted in our success so far. And that's really going to be a focus of ours going forward. So now we're going to move up to Arizona and the great Arizona copper belt. I put up this signpost in the middle of the property just to show we're in elephant country here. We've got great deposits in virtually every direction. Resolution is 45 kilometers to the north. San Manuel, North America's first block cave, 35 kilometers to the south of us. On the backside of this sign is Morenci, one of the largest copper deposits in the world, is 100 kilometers to the east of us. And significantly, we're right next door to an operating smelter. It's only 2 kilometers away from the edge of the property. So in terms of location, I can't imagine having a better located mining project than this one. We are in the heart of one of the most productive copper belts known. And there's a more traditional plan view map of the project. You can see this is Tucson down here. It's about an hour and a half drive to the south from the project. And then Phoenix is about an hour and a half drive to the northwest. So we're pretty centrally located in southern Arizona. The Hayden smelter right next door to us, Resolution up here, Morenci over here, San Manuel down here. Those 3 deposits that I had mentioned. Now, very important to our story is the Christmas mine, which is right next door to us. And I'll tell you why that one is so important to us. This is a closer look at the property. You can see Highway 77 is a light yellow line here that goes right through the project. So we have excellent access, obviously. Gila River goes right through the property as well. And San Pedro River is just off to the west. So, one of the biggest challenges with a lot of projects in Arizona is access to water. Clearly, we have a lot of water in the area. So I think that's to our advantage. Here's the Hayden smelter. Local communities of Hayden and Winkleman, obviously, 100% of the population in those communities would either be directly or indirectly employed by mining. So good, friendly communities to have in the local area. And here's the Christmas mine. Christmas was mined from 1905 to 1981, produced about 25 million tons of 1.8% copper. So high grade, moderate tonnage. And I'll show you why we think that's so important to our story. This is a generalized stratigraphy of the area. It was produced by the Arizona Geological Survey. You can see Christmas Mine is on the left. The Hot Breccia property that we own is on the right. And these 3 blue limestone units at the top are the 3 units that hosted that 25 million tons of 1.8% copper. Now, we've got those same 3 blue units over on our property. But they're buried underneath this thick Williamson Canyon volcanics, so masking what's going on down below here. Now, my analog for this would be 45 kilometers to the north, the Resolution deposit. At Resolution, it was right next door to the Magma mine, which over a number of years produced about 20 million tons of 5% or better copper. So very high grade mineralization, moderate tonnage. And there's a belief that the mineralized system there is linked to a deeper deposit that has more recently been discovered, Resolution, 1.6 billion tons of 1.6% copper. So that's a pretty good analog for the situation that we've got at Hot Breccia property. And I think based on that analog alone, we've got a pretty compelling thesis for doing additional exploration here. We've got even better supportive evidence than that. There was a guy in 1971 by the name of Larry Barrett that did a master's thesis in the area. And he went out and he actually mapped in detail all these rocks over on the Hot Breccia property. And he found out, sure enough, there's a bunch of volcanics here masking the rocks that I really want to look at that are sitting down below. But every once in a while, Larry would come across one of these. And this is a hydrothermal breccia. That's the name of our property, Hot Breccia. And you can see the clasts that are in this breccia. Many of these clasts are carbonates from down below. And when he found these clasts of limestone and marble, he would actually find that they were highly altered and highly mineralized. And it was proof positive that there's an active hydrothermal system percolating at depth on this property. And so Larry, when he was done filing his thesis, he went to work for Kennecott, and they actually drilled a few holes in this area over a 2 kilometer by 1 kilometer area. And sure enough, every time they went down through the volcanics, they got into highly altered and mineralized limestones. Now, over the years, unfortunately, this drill core has been destroyed. We only have partial records of the drill logs from this area, but we do know that there were several samples that were over % copper and some that were over 3% copper. So, strong mineralization, alteration was very good. The principal of the private company that we actually auctioned this property from used to work for Kennecott and had seen this core before it was destroyed, and was so taken by the strength of the skarn system that compelled him to acquire the property and eventually auction it to us. So very exciting story. There's been virtually no work done on this property for over 40 years. The Christmas mine shut down in 1981, and at that time it was tools down for everybody in the immediate vicinity. And there's been nothing done since. So now we have the opportunity to go in for the first time with a modern exploration toolbox. We can do some things that couldn't be done 40 years ago, and that's really important when you're looking for these deeper deposits. We can go in, for instance, and do a VTEM survey. Now, VTEM is a geophysical technique that is used by Newcrest on every project that they have globally because it does a good job of mapping out sulfide systems at depth. And that's exactly what we want to do here. Now, we might do other types of work and other surveys as well, but ultimately it's going to come around to drilling. We need to do some deep drilling. And we think that the drill hole length will probably be a kilometer or so to get down to the bottom of those carbonate units. So it's actually a very reasonable depth. We're not talking about anything that's too deep here. And if the system exists in those carbonates, we think that probably 6 or 8 drill holes will get us to the conclusion of whether we want to continue exploring this property or not. And so that's where we ultimately are going to take this. So I think the two projects really complement each other well. We've got Adelita, which has been a very steady performer for us. It's actually been stellar in terms of the consistency of results that we've been getting off the property. Everything is going very well there. And then Hot Breccia is sort of our swinging for the fences type of opportunity. If we find what we're looking for at Hot Breccia, this is potentially a company maker type deposit and something that would be found to be very attractive by all the major copper producers, all of whom we know are very active in Arizona. It's a real mining hotbed, so in a great neighborhood. So that's our very simple story. As we've only been trading for about 6 months now, we're hitting all of our milestones corporately and from an exploration perspective, and we're looking forward to being able to keep the momentum going and finding more. So with that, Jorge, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I think maybe it'll be a good time also to share the news that you put out this morning regarding the financing.
Yeah, well, obviously it's important to us to be able to keep our field crews active. So we've decided to go to the market and raise some money. We've got a very attractively priced financing on the table right now. We're going to try to raise $1 million with units that are priced at 13 cents, which is a discount to the current market. Each unit will be a common share and a half warrant, each warrant good for 2 years with a strike price of 22 cents. So I think it'll be a fairly popular or attractive investment opportunity for investors out there.
Great. Yeah. And I think obviously, an open invitation to anybody who's listening to the webinar either now live or in the next few days on the different replays to participate, and you can contact us to the same link that you used to register. Or maybe, Steve, do you want to also share your email?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Steve at infinitumcopper.com. You can see on the screen, there's Anna at infinitumcopper.com. You can contact either of us, and we'll be able to get a sub agreement over to you and make sure that you're taken care of.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Steve. It's a very attractive opportunity, and kind of a very unique price, very unique terms, and on an almost like investing in a seed round of a shell, but with an asset that already has so much exploration and so much momentum. I invite everybody to review also in detail the last two press releases, which came in September, where I think it's very high grade copper grades. Not easy to find a project like this, and again, a very exciting project, very exciting team, and a great opportunity for anybody who wants to take the ride with us for what we hope will be projects that we get to explore to its full potential. So thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, Peter. We do have a number of questions, and I'll start reading them out. And anybody who's listening who would like to ask a question, please do send it to the chat. So this first question says, what do you think are the most important features of La Adelita mineralized system that make it a prospective exploration target? And how would you rank the exploration potential there? I think probably means in the various zones of the project.
What we're seeing at Adelita is a large system, lots of different styles of mineralization, almost all of them high grade, very exciting emerging system. It's hard for me to decide whether I would want to see drill holes go into Pericos or into Trancas, where all that gold is, or continue drilling things off. That's a Hollywood problem to have to make those choices between the quality of those targets. But I think it is an integrated system, and we can apply the models and the technology that have been developed in other places and keep going. I mean, once we can have boots on bedrock instead of boots in mud, then we can get working.
Peter, and yes, as you bring Las Trancas, and maybe for those of you who didn't catch it, at Las Trancas from trenches had a pretty spectacular gold intersect. I mean, based on of your knowledge and experience of these type of systems, Peter, I mean, what could it, what could this potentially mean?
Well, it's important to emphasize that it's not just impressive gold; it's impressive gold and copper, and those two elements, those two metals, commonly follow each other around. It's probably more common to find copper without gold than copper with gold. But you look at a place like Resolution that Steve mentioned. Resolution has a 1.5 grams of gold that goes along with 1.5% of copper, or roughly at that kind of rate. So to have a porphyry system with that much gold in it is telling you, it's probably telling you all kinds of stuff about the nature of the intrusive and how it was generated and the host rocks in the area, and that's all academically important. But what matters to us is 9 meters of 0.5 ounce of gold and almost 2% copper. That's a good start on something mineable. If we can just prove that it has some legs and that they hold together, that's a pretty exciting standalone by itself, not counting the fact that it's got 3 or 4 almost equally attractive targets that have emerged on the property already. So I think Steve calls it a target-rich environment, and it's certainly true.
Great. So we have another question here. What depth have the drill holes been so far in La Adelita? From which depth to which depth have we found mineralization? And then follow-up question, do you need to drill a lot deeper than you have drilled so far?
Sure, I can take that one. The beautiful thing about Cerro Grande is that it's found right on surface. And so we start exploring at surface, and then we continue to follow the mineralization where it goes. And so far, that's in every direction. It's an open, long strike in both directions, and also to depth. So there's no point at this point in starting to drill 600 or 700 meter deep holes. I think this deepest intercept on mineralization is about 300, a little bit more than 300 meters deep, and is still open to depth. But we're going to continue to explore near surface as long as we're having success there. And then we'll follow it to depth and do that more expensive exploration when we get to the point where we feel that's appropriate.
Great. We have another question here asking, for this current financing, could you just give a very broad perspective on how the funds would be allocated?
Yeah, well, we want to advance the exploration on both our projects, Adelita and Hot Breccia. Hot Breccia is an earlier stage project, and I'd like to take a look at least getting some airborne work lined up there, that VTEM survey. So we'll be exploring that opportunity, but really the bulk of the funds will be spent on La Adelita, where we currently have quite a bit of momentum going there. I want to keep the field crew in the field, which is where they're the most productive. It doesn't do us good to have them in the office. We need to keep those guys employed out in the field. One of the first things we're going to do is a magnetometer survey over top of the Cerro Grande Pericos area. We've in our first 4 drill holes, we've identified the fact that a lot of the high-grade copper, gold, silver mineralization is associated with magnetite. Magnetite is a relatively easy mineral to follow because it's got such strong ferromagnetic characteristics. And so we can do a simple magnetometer survey in the area to help us follow that system. So there's things like that we're going to be doing, and we'll be doing a little bit of drilling as well. Las Trancas, we now have the land access agreements in place with the local ejido, so we can get out there and do some drilling there.
It's probably also worth mentioning that we're just going into the ideal time of year to be working in this part of the world. That it's the summer heat is gone, the summer rains are going away, and for the next 8 months or so, the conditions are absolutely magnificent for getting those boots on the rocks.
Great. There's a question here, and I think, I'll let Steve answer it, but asking about, what the cost of doing deep drill holes in Arizona would be, I guess with the caveat that, we're nowhere close to be ready to drill in Arizona, but maybe Steve, you could address that.
Yeah, well, one of the nice things about going and working in a jurisdiction like Arizona is they're doing it all there already. So there's established diamond drillers that are experts at doing deep drilling, and we've seen some of our peers in the southern part of Arizona that have been doing deep drilling. So we have all of the contractors in place already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Work in Arizona is more expensive, certainly, than it is in Mexico. Mexico, the diamond drilling contracts come at a much significantly lower price than they will be in Arizona. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the idea is to get the work done. And it might cost us a little bit more, but I think working in Arizona, we'll be able to get it done well.
Well, I think that's all the questions we have. I think maybe I give both Peter and Steve a quick opportunity to say any parting words.
Well, the one thing I would say about Hot Breccia is that if it is comparable to resolution, and it looks like it has a lot of similarities to resolution, that's a really big target. And so you don't necessarily need a huge number of those deep drill holes to demonstrate that you've got something big there. So that's something to factor in. It's an individual hole may be expensive, but if you don't have to drill a whole lot of them, the ultimate cost of making the discovery is more than reasonable.
Excellent.
In terms of parting words from me, I would just say, we've really been just firing on all cylinders corporately. I think that we've been achieving our milestones, and that largely is centered around the fact that we've got a great team out in the field that is able to produce the results for us. So we just want to make sure that we keep everything going. We're fighting some headwinds in the market right now, as everybody else in our sector is as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's our success corporately and with the exploration crews that's going to make us rise above the crowd. So looking forward to being able to have the opportunity to do that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much, Steve. I think from my side, I think just echoing, Peter and Steve's comments about just, what a great opportunity it is to participate in this financing. It's obviously something that I'm looking forward to doing myself. And as tough as the markets are now, the interesting thing is just looking at the data for copper. On the supply side, I think there's a big consensus that in the medium term we're going to be in a situation where there's just not enough copper to fill the needs of the market. And really the beauty of a system, for instance, like Adelita, is we're zeroing in an area that's very robust in at surface, the skarn. We'll keep exploring to see how big the system can get, but it's already something that's quite actionable for and very high grade, which again is very unique. And then we have this opportunity in Arizona as well. So we're really well positioned for the time where copper comes back to prominence, especially in the mind of investors. And again, I would invite you to visit the website and do some more due diligence on the company. But we had one of these opportunities that in part also has been we went public at a time where the market was already trending down, and as a result of that, we're moving in the right direction on the assets. We're delivering. We put together an incredible company, and you essentially, not you, all of us can buy it at a discount. So invite everybody to look at that. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, everybody, wherever you are. Great to see you all, and thank you, Peter. Thank you, Steve, for taking the time to speak to everyone today.
Okay, thanks, Jorge.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend too.